Welcome to This Week in Auburn Sports. I'm Sports Editor Will Gaines. That's Assistant Sports Editor Justin Ferguson. Tigers went on the road last week into College Station, had a big victory on a top 10 Texas A&M team. So what was kind of some of the things you saw from that victory last week?
I think the offense did extremely well against a defense that Texas A&M struggles defensively this year, especially in a conference like the SEC where this year it's like offense is ruling compared to years past. The thing that impressed me the most, talking offensively, is even at the end of the game, Malzahn always says it, we're a run team. We're going to use the run to set up the pass. And even when A&M was like stacking the box, 9 men in the box, Auburn was like, we're still going to run it down your throat. And they ended up pulling out a big victory. The defense was impressive because I think we talked about this last a couple of weeks ago when we started previewing this game. You can't stop Johnny Manziel. No one can stop Johnny Manziel. But they slowed him down. So that was kind of what I saw out of the offense. But, what about the defense? What did you see out of the defense?
Well, I saw, the biggest thing is you can't stop Johnny Manziel, but they took away the run game from him. Now, he still had a pretty good game running the football, but he didn't just blow you away with it. I think it was the least rushing yards he'd had all year.
Yeah.
And then they forced him to throw the ball, beat you throwing the football, and they forced turnovers. That's things you've got to do, and they forced him there at the end. They were putting pressure and he was just throwing the football.
He keeps plays alive better than anyone I think anyone has ever seen. But in that same vein, he dodges all these sacks and then just throws it up for grabs. Sometimes Mike Evans goes up and gets it. He had more receiving yards. No one receiver has ever had that many yards against Auburn. But can't bail them out always. Auburn came up with big plays down the stretch.
They did. We've also got another sport about to start up this week. Men's basketball will start Monday night in an exhibition game against Victory University. So kind of what are some things that you're expecting to see from this game on Monday night?
A lot of newcomers. There's been a lot of roster turnover each year. Barbie's been here. And Coach Tony Barbie's got some bigger players. And he's got a little bit more depth in the paint than he's had in years past when you think about it's been Rob Chubb, basically, has been your post play. He's gone now. You got Hassan Dixon Tatum's back. And then a couple other big guys. KT Harrell, the transfer from Virginia, the Montgomery native. He was such a highly touted recruit. He's now back at Auburn. He's eligible now. So see what kind of production he can get. And you're supposed to beat Victory. It's not going to be about the scoreboard. It's going to be about seeing, playing against a little live action instead of playing instead of scrimmaging against each other. So it's going to be interesting to see how Auburn looks. Because there's a lot of question marks surrounding this team heading into the season.
Yeah, it's a big year for Tony Barbie. We also had a issue. Our Plainsman came out this week, and Auburn had a very good week last week. Had 3 players of the week in 3 different sports. Nick Marshall was the SEC Offensive Player of the Week. Casey Ramsey was Player of the Week, SEC Player of the Week in soccer, and Sarah Roblicki was SEC Player of the Week in volleyball. So a very good week for Auburn players last week, and Justin had a write-up on that, so make sure you pick up a copy and check that out. We've also got a story on the basketball team, kind of previewing some of the new faces. KT Harrell, a lot of new guys that'll be playing in the paint this year for the basketball team. And we also had a game day tab come out this week, so I'll let Justin go through that.
Every home game, we have a game day tab kind of just previewing the matchup, and kind of we focused on where Auburn has kind of gone thus far this year. Another one with you predict to defeat Florida Atlantic, but we had a good scouting report from Florida Atlantic University, their news magazine. Had a great talk with them. Stuff on we got a story on the offensive line and their improvement. 1983 team is going to be honored this weekend. We have a little write-up on them, comparing them to the top Auburn teams of all time. Cody Parkey story, Elijah Daniel. We have a couple good columns in their picks, as always. So make sure you run and get a copy of that and before tomorrow night's game.
And we're not going to preview too much of the Florida Atlantic game, but because Auburn should come away with a victory, this will be a tough test, kind of like Arkansas State was earlier in the year. But I believe,
a lot of question marks.
I believe Auburn's the better team.
Yeah.
But if they can come out with a victory in this game, it is going to set up a tough stretch. But Auburn now, with the victory over Texas A&M last week and LSU's loss to Ole Miss, sets up basically Auburn controls their own destiny. Now they've got to beat an undefeated Alabama team at the end of the year, but things set up nicely for them. So kind of what are some of the things you're starting when this 4-game stretch gets started?
this Florida Atlantic game is couldn't come at a better time for Auburn. When you come after the high of beating a top 10 team on the road, what do you do the next week? How do you rebound? There's so much temptation to just kind of play flat. So you're playing a lesser quality opponent. Florida Atlantic's played some really close games this year, so it'll be interesting. They'll be looking for a win to kind of turn their season around, a big win that could help them get into the postseason. But this is going to be a game where Auburn needs to get, going to rotate people in, get as many snaps as they can, because with depth, you never know what's going on the injury front on offense and defense. If you can get people to get more and more game experience, that's going to help, because you have 2 road games against some. Arkansas's had a down year. Tennessee's resurging. They're still, jury's still out on them. And then you come home for the first time ever to play both Georgia and Alabama at Jordan-Hare Stadium. Those are going to be 2 tough games. I don't care who's healthy and who's not for Georgia. Georgia's always a tough opponent, and then Alabama's still the number 1 team in the country, and they've still won, 3 out of the last 4 national championships. So that's always going to be a tough team to play. So it can't be understated how much Gus Malzahn has turned this team around, the culture. People talking Coach of the Year. Just the way Auburn has played this year. And we talked about it, them being down 10 at A&M and coming back and winning. When you compare this year to last year, it's just night and day. And so this is an important game, and it's going to be a tough stretch. We're going to see a lot from this Auburn team, especially those back-to-back road games.
And we'll definitely dive into this a little bit more next week when that 4-game stretch gets started. But that's all we have for this week. We appreciate y'all watching, and check back next week for This Week in Auburn Sports. Better.